Mia sat in the heart of a lavish mansion, dressed in designer clothes that mirrored the elegance of her surroundings. Her world was one of manicured lawns and crystal chandeliers, the kind of life where she never had to question her privilege or look beyond the bubble of her existence. However, that bubble was about to burst in a way she'd never imagined. Today, Mia found herself glaring at Isabella, the quiet girl helping her mother, Rosa, the family's housemaid, with the daily chores. Isabella's soft features and modest clothes marked her as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in Mia's meticulously curated world. And Mia, with the instinctive harshness of the spoiled, made sure Isabella felt it. "Watch it!" she barked, as Isabella accidentally brushed against her holding a heavy tray. "Do you even know how to carry a tray?" Her words sliced through the air like a blade, the condescension unmistakable. Isabella's cheeks flushed, but she said nothing, bowing her head as she continued her work. But there was something in her silence, a resilience that Mia couldn't understand, let alone appreciate. Rosa, watching from across the room, turned away, her face a mask of quiet sorrow as she polished the silverware, her hands trembling ever so slightly. Later that evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Mia's mother, Sarah, observed her daughter's haughty demeanor. Over the years, Sarah had watched with growing unease as Mia's kindness faded, replaced by a cold entitlement. And it wasn't lost on her that Mia's harshest scorn was reserved for Rosa and Isabella. But tonight, Sarah had reached a breaking point. She wasn't going to sit in silence any longer. After dinner, Sarah knocked on Mia's door. "We need to talk," she said firmly, her usually gentle eyes now steely. "What you did today with Isabella, enough of it, Mia." But Mia only rolled her eyes, dismissing her mother's words with a wave of her hand. "Why should I care about her, Mom? She's just the housemaid's kid. It's not like she's anyone important," Mia replied, her tone sharp and dismissive. And that was the moment. The words Mia uttered stung Sarah in a way she hadn't anticipated, and she could no longer hold back the truth. Taking a deep breath, Sarah closed the door and took a seat across from her daughter, her face clouded with a weight she'd carried for years. "Mia, there's something you don't know about yourself," Sarah began, her voice quivering. "It's time I told you the truth about where you came from." Mia's smile faded as her mother's words lingered in the air, heavy with a strange sense of finality. She narrowed her eyes, unsure whether this was some tactic to make her feel guilty or something more. "Mom, what do you mean?" she asked, her voice laced with irritation. Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers fidgeting with a loose thread on the edge of her sleeve. "You were adopted, Mia," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "Your father and I, we didn't bring you into this world, but we chose you, and we've loved you every day since." Mia's mouth fell open, and for a moment she felt as if the ground beneath her had slipped away. The revelation sliced through her, leaving her stunned and speechless. Adopted? She'd never even entertained the possibility. Her parents had always treated her with the kind of indulgence and affection that she'd taken for granted. The silence that stretched between them was thick with disbelief. How could you not tell me? And why now?" Mia demanded, her tone a mixture of hurt and confusion. "Because, Mia," Sarah said softly, "I thought you deserved to know. Especially now." She hesitated before adding, "You weren't left alone, abandoned. Your birth mother, she had to make an impossible choice. She gave you to us in the hope that you'd have a better life, one she couldn't provide at the time." Mia's hands trembled as she struggled to absorb this new reality. "And who is she?" she asked, a nervous tremor creeping into her voice. "Do I know her?" Sarah's eyes dropped, and her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, Mia, you know her. She's been here all along, watching over you, in the only way she could." A cold wave of realization washed over Mia. No, it couldn't be. Her mind raced, unwilling to accept the truth her mother was carefully unraveling. But Sarah's next words shattered any lingering doubts. Rosa is your biological mother, Mia." The impact of those words hit Mia like a punch. Rosa, the housemaid, the woman she'd looked down upon, barely acknowledging her existence beyond giving orders or issuing scornful remarks. That woman was her mother? The room spun as Mia struggled to breathe. Images flashed through her mind, every memory she had of Rosa, her quiet, steady presence, her resilience, and the sadness Mia had often noticed in her eyes but never questioned. And then, the look Rosa had given her every time she'd snapped or mocked Isabella. Mia's heart hammered in her chest, a feeling of shame and remorse bubbling up in a way she'd never known before. The following morning, Mia found herself unable to face Rosa. She hid in her room, trying to piece together the fragments of her past, haunted by the scenes of her own callousness. But guilt gnawed at her, its weight growing heavier with each passing hour. She knew she couldn't avoid Rosa forever. Finally, late in the afternoon, Mia gathered the courage to step out. She found Rosa in the kitchen, meticulously peeling vegetables for dinner. Rosa looked up, her expression as guarded as always, though there was a flicker of something deeper in her eyes, a sadness she'd never shown openly. "Rosa," Mia's voice cracked, barely a whisper. She forced herself to look the woman in the eyes, grappling with words that felt foreign on her tongue. I know." Rosa's hand froze mid-motion. Her face softened as she looked at Mia, her usual guarded expression melting into one of quiet pain and longing. "You know?" she asked softly, as if afraid to believe it. "Yes. Mom told me last night," Mia said, her voice trembling. "I didn't know. I never guessed." Rosa nodded, a small, sad smile curving her lips. "I never expected you to," she replied, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "I wanted you to have the life I couldn't give you, a life without knowing the struggles that defined mine." Mia's heart twisted at the quiet dignity in Rosa's words, and the weight of her own actions over the years pressed down on her. She opened her mouth to apologize, but found the words lodged in her throat, blocked by a lifetime of pride. How could she ever make up for years of cruelty? As days passed, Mia observed Rosa more closely, her presence lingering in the kitchen and corridors as if seeking something she couldn't define. She began noticing the small details, things she'd overlooked all her life. The quiet strength Rosa carried, her graceful movements, and the unmistakable warmth she showed toward Isabella, who Mia now realized was her sister. But guilt had become her shadow, following her everywhere, and no amount of polite apologies or softened tones seemed enough to lift it. It gnawed at her, demanding something deeper, something that words alone couldn't fix. Desperate for advice, Mia turned to her mother one evening, catching her just before she left for a business trip. "Mom," she said, her voice laden with hesitation, "I don't know what to do. How do I even begin to make things right?" Sarah regarded her daughter thoughtfully. "Mia, maybe it's time to understand Rosa's life beyond what you see on the surface. She's lived through struggles you've never known. Perhaps understanding them will help you find your way forward." The next morning, Mia followed her mother's suggestion. She approached Rosa, heart pounding, and asked if she could spend the day with her. Rosa seemed surprised but agreed, though she didn't ask for an explanation. Together, they walked to the modest neighborhood where Rosa lived, a place Mia had never seen. She found herself in awe of the simplicity and the warmth that defined Rosa's world. They passed by small stores where Rosa was greeted warmly by locals, and Mia observed the quiet respect people showed her, a respect that didn't stem from wealth or power, but from genuine admiration. It was a different world, and in it, Rosa was someone Mia had never known, strong, capable, and beloved. The day ended with the two women sitting on a weathered bench in a small park. Mia couldn't hold back any longer. "I treated you terribly, Rosa," she confessed, her voice thick with regret. "And Isabella, too. I didn't know." Rosa placed a hand on Mia's, her touch warm and reassuring. "You were only a child, Mia," she said gently. "Children don't always understand. I was just happy to be near you, even if it meant staying in the background. That was enough for me." Mia's chest tightened, a wave of guilt and sorrow crashing over her. The depths of Rosa's sacrifice were beyond anything she could have imagined. And in that moment, Mia made a silent vow to herself. She would find a way to bridge the years of hurt to make up for every careless word and every dismissive glance. That night, as Mia lay in bed, her mind racing with plans, ideas, and memories, she knew that this was only the beginning of her journey toward understanding and redemption. Her world had irrevocably changed, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of purpose beyond herself. It was time to confront the truth of who she was, not as Mia, the privileged daughter of a wealthy family, but as the daughter of a woman who had sacrificed everything so she could have a better life, and she wouldn't rest until she had honored that sacrifice in every way she could. In the weeks following her revelation, Mia was consumed with a fierce determination to bridge the chasm between herself and Rosa. Yet every time she tried, words failed her, and she felt the unspoken weight of years of scorn and distance between them. Her apologies felt hollow, the sting of her past actions too fresh, too deeply woven into the fabric of Rosa's life. But Mia refused to give up. She knew that words alone would never be enough. She had to show Rosa that she had changed. One afternoon, Mia overheard her parents discussing an upcoming community gala. Their family was renowned in the local social circles, and their attendance was highly anticipated. As Mia listened, an idea took shape in her mind. Bold, risky, and unlike anything she'd done before. She knew it was time to shatter her reputation, her pride, everything she'd built her life on, to prove to Rosa just how much she meant to her. The night of the gala arrived, and Mia made a decision that left her mother, Sarah, visibly stunned. "Mia, are you sure?" Sarah whispered, her face filled with a mixture of astonishment and unease. She knew that Mia had always been the shining star at these events, the daughter who everyone admired. But tonight, Mia was planning something that would challenge every perception others held of her. "Yes, Mom," Mia replied, her voice steady. "This is the only way." Rosa, who had been quietly preparing refreshments in the kitchen, paused as Mia entered, a hint of hesitation in her eyes. Mia looked at her with an expression of quiet resolve. "Rosa," she began, "I want you to come with me tonight, as my guest." Her voice softened, trembling slightly. "Please." Rosa's eyes widened, her face an expression of disbelief mingled with quiet hope. "Mia, I know it's unusual," Mia interrupted, holding her gaze, "but I need you there. Please, this is important to me, to us."
Hey there, quick message. Grab a paper, write down HeroKind Stories, our channel name. Come back soon, we've got incredible stories you won't want to miss.
As they entered the grand ballroom, all eyes fell on them. The whispers began almost immediately, an endless murmur that swept through the room like a wave. People recognized Rosa, of course. They'd seen her accompany the family as staff, helping at various events. But tonight, she stood next to Mia, her head held high, not as a housemaid, but as an honored guest. Mia's friends exchanged curious glances. Her father's business associates whispered to one another, clearly puzzled by this unexpected turn. Mia ignored them all, holding Rosa's arm as she guided her through the room with a dignity and purpose she'd never felt before. Every step was a challenge to her past, a defiance against her own upbringing, her own prejudices. Tonight, she wasn't the girl who judged Rosa, who had mocked Isabella. Tonight, she was Rosa's daughter, unashamed and determined to show the world who Rosa truly was. Finally, as the night reached its peak, Mia took the stage, drawing everyone's attention. The spotlight illuminated her as she looked over the crowd, her heart pounding. She took a deep breath, steadying herself as she spoke into the microphone. "There's something I need to share with all of you tonight," she began, her voice strong despite the butterflies in her stomach. "For years, I lived a life of privilege. I had everything handed to me, surrounded by people who told me how lucky I was. But I never stopped to ask what that privilege was built on. Until now." Her eyes drifted to Rosa, standing at the edge of the stage, a mix of pride and apprehension on her face. "I want you all to meet Rosa, the woman who has worked in my home for as long as I can remember," Mia continued. "But she's more than just someone who worked for us. She's the woman who gave me life, who sacrificed everything so I could have a future." A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd, the shock evident on their faces. Mia's father shifted uncomfortably, but Sarah's eyes filled with quiet pride as she watched her daughter. Mia continued, her voice unwavering. I spent years looking down on her and her daughter, Isabella, not knowing the truth, not knowing that the woman I dismissed was the very reason I had this life to begin with. And now, it's time I honor that truth. She turned to Rosa, reaching out a hand. Rosa, you're more than a mother. You're a hero. And tonight, I want the world to see you the way I do. For a moment, there was silence as the weight of her words settled over the room. Then, a ripple of applause began, hesitant at first, but growing stronger as the guests began to understand the depth of the moment unfolding before them. Rosa, visibly moved, stepped onto the stage, her face flushed with emotion as she took Mia's hand. As the applause swelled, Mia looked out at the crowd, her heart swelling with a fierce pride and gratitude that felt foreign but right. She had taken a step she could never take back, shattered the polished image she'd clung to, all to honor the woman who had given her life. And she knew, with a certainty that filled her to her core, that it was worth every risk. In the days that followed, Mia faced a whirlwind of reactions from those around her. Some praised her, seeing her actions as brave. Others were scandalized, gossiping about her sudden fascination with the housemaid. But Mia no longer cared. She had broken through the invisible barrier that had kept her from understanding her own heart, her own family, and she felt free in a way she'd never imagined. But there was still one final step to take, one last action that would bridge the remaining distance between her and Rosa, between her and Isabella. One morning, she arrived at Rosa's modest house. Isabella opened the door, her expression wary as she faced Mia. But Mia didn't flinch. Isabella, she said gently, I've hurt you both so much. I can't change the past, but I'd like to be part of your future, if you'll let me. Isabella stared at her, the shock in her eyes gradually melting into something softer, something hopeful. Without a word, she stepped aside, inviting Mia into the warmth of their home, into a new beginning that neither of them had anticipated, but both longed for. And as Mia stepped through the doorway, she knew her journey was far from over. The bond she'd broken with years of pride and blindness would take time to rebuild, but now she was ready to make amends, ready to be the daughter Rosa had always dreamed she could be. In the weeks that followed, Mia became a constant presence in Rosa and Isabella's life. She would visit them every evening after work, bringing small gifts, helping with chores, or simply sitting with them, listening to stories she'd once dismissed but now craved as precious pieces of her history. Slowly, she began to weave herself into their world, feeling the invisible scars between them soften with each shared moment. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast a warm glow over Rosa's cozy kitchen, Mia found herself sitting at the table, watching as Rosa prepared a simple dinner. Isabella was setting the table, her movements careful and practiced. They worked in sync, no words exchanged, but an undeniable harmony in their shared tasks. For the first time, Mia felt a pang of envy, not of material wealth, but of this quiet unity, a closeness she had never known in her previous life. Over time, Mia became part of their unspoken rhythm, contributing in ways she'd never imagined. One night, as she peeled potatoes beside Rosa, Mia finally asked the question she'd avoided for so long. Rosa, why did you come to work in our house? Why did you stay, even after all these years? Rosa paused, her hands stilled by the question. She took a deep breath, looking down at the potato in her hands. Because I wanted to be close to you, Mia, she said softly. I wanted to see the person you became, even if it meant hiding in the background. It was the only way I could be part of your life. The weight of Rosa's sacrifice settled heavily on Mia's heart. She placed a gentle hand over Rosa's, feeling the calluses, the proof of years of labor done out of love. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I don't deserve it, but thank you. That night, as they sat around the table, laughter and warmth filling the small kitchen, Mia felt something she hadn't expected, a sense of belonging. a feeling of home. It was different from the mansion she'd grown up in, but it was real, grounded in the love she had spent years overlooking. With this new bond came a sense of responsibility, a desire to share the blessings she'd been given with Rosa and Isabella. Without consulting anyone, Mia took bold steps to secure a more comfortable life for them. She knew she couldn't erase the past, but she could at least make amends through action. She reached out to her family's lawyer, setting up a trust fund for Isabella's education, ensuring that she would never have to struggle as her mother had. When she told Rosa of her plans, the older woman initially protested, her pride flaring as she shook her head. "We don't need charity, Mia," Rosa said firmly, her eyes flashing. "It's not charity, Rosa," Mia replied, her tone gentle but unwavering. "It's family. It's what family does for each other." Her words hung in the air, settling slowly as Rosa's resistance softened. With a sigh, Rosa nodded, a reluctant smile breaking through her pride. "Thank you, Mia," she murmured, the words laced with a gratitude that ran deep. The years passed, and the connection between them only grew. Mia watched with joy as Isabella blossomed, taking on the world with a fierce independence and quiet strength that reminded Mia so much of her mother. Isabella excelled in school, and with the resources Mia had provided, she pursued a path that no one had dared dream for her. One evening, as they celebrated Isabella's college graduation, Mia felt an overwhelming pride. It was a modest celebration at Rosa's home, attended by only a few close friends. But for Mia, this gathering was more precious than any grand event she'd ever attended. As she raised her glass in a toast, she locked eyes with Rosa, her heart swelling with gratitude and love for the woman who had given her not only life, but a family. "To Isabella," Mia said, her voice choked with emotion, "and to the two strongest women I know." Everyone raised their glasses, and in that moment, under the gentle glow of the kitchen lights, Mia knew she had finally found her place. She had come full circle, not as the spoiled, privileged girl she once was, but as a daughter, a sister, and part of a family she had once overlooked. Years later, Mia sat on that same weathered bench in the small park near Rosa's home. Beside her sat Isabella, who was now a young woman with her own dreams and ambitions. They watched the children playing nearby, their laughter ringing out in the warm summer air. "Remember when you first brought me here?" Mia asked, a smile tugging at her lips. Isabella chuckled. "Yes, and I didn't trust you one bit back then." Mia laughed, a sound filled with warmth and acceptance. "I didn't deserve it back then, but you trusted me eventually." Isabella turned to her, her eyes softening. "You've done more than make up for it, Mia. You're my sister, family, and nothing's ever going to change that." As they sat in comfortable silence, Mia felt a profound peace settle over her, a fulfillment she had once thought impossible. She had forged a bond that went beyond wealth or privilege, one rooted in resilience, love, and the kind of sacrifice only family could understand. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia thought of Rosa and the quiet strength she had imparted to her children. She knew that wherever life took them, they would carry Rosa's spirit with them, a legacy of love that would endure long after she was gone. For the first time in her life, Mia knew exactly who she was, and she was ready to embrace whatever future awaited her, bound, finally, to a family she had once nearly lost, but had fought to reclaim. If you enjoyed this story of love, resilience, and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to HeroKind Stories and share it with others who appreciate tales of family bonds and self-discovery. Click on the video appearing on the screen to discover more moving stories that celebrate the power of human connection. See you in the next story.